Have you ever, looked at an ancient text, maybe something really big and complex, and just felt a bit lost? Like, where do you even start?
Oh, definitely. It can be pretty overwhelming sometimes.
Right. So you've seen these cinematic universes for superheroes, fantasy worlds, all that stuff. But what about using that kind of idea for, say, biblical stories?
Oh, wow. Now that's an interesting angle.
Exactly. Today we're doing a deep dive into just that. This concept called the Biblical Cinematic Universe, or BCU for short.
Mm-hmm.
We've pulled together some different bits of information, excerpts really, that talk about what the BCU is trying to do, its purpose, how it's structured, this whole hierarchy thing they've set up, its timeline, the characters.
Gotcha. Our
mission basically is to unpack this whole framework. It's pretty unique, and we want to understand, what's the core idea behind it.
Well, looking at the sources, the BCU is described as this really expansive, detailed, and importantly, consistent fictional universe. The aim is to bring biblical themes, characters, all that, to life, but framed in this very specific, almost military-style way.
Military style. Okay, interesting.
Yeah. But, and this is really crucial, they're very clear. It's not meant to replace the Bible itself. Not at all.
Right. That's a key distinction.
Absolutely. It's designed to be more like a gateway. A catalyst is the word they use.
And catalyst for what exactly?
Well, the idea is to spark interest, maybe for people who find the Bible itself a bit challenging to get into, or maybe hard to understand, or even for folks who maybe, need a bit of a refresh, a reigniting of their faith.
I see.
So by presenting these stories through a lens that might feel more familiar or accessible today, like a cinematic universe, the BCU hopes to sort of reinitiate that spiritual spark and hopefully encourage people to then go deeper into the actual scriptures themselves.
Huh. Okay, so it's less about strict theology and more about accessibility, using a modern, familiar format to maybe lower the barrier to entry.
That seems to be the core idea, yeah.
Yeah.
Breaking down that potential intimidation factor.
Okay, let's dig into that a bit more then. The why behind it. What's the main purpose the creators actually stated for, reimagining these narratives this way?
So the sources say the main goal is to reimagine biblical narratives, to present these well-known stories and figures, but in a fresh way, unified, expansive, kind of like you see in Marvel or Star Wars.
Right, connecting the dots between stories.
Exactly, and they feel this approach lets them explore the themes, why characters do what they do, the sort of bigger divine picture across all these different stories.
Okay.
The intention really is to weave everything together, the accounts, the characters, the spiritual ideas, but within this very structured military framework.
Which brings up that question again. How does a military structure map onto spiritual concepts? Especially something like, divine authority.
Yeah, that's definitely where it gets really interesting. The BCU tackles divine authority with a pretty clear military-style hierarchy.
Okay, how so?
At the very top, the absolute peak, they have what they call the divine command.
Divine command. Oh,
and they specifically name the members. Yahweh, the Holy Spirit, and Jesus Christ.
So the Trinity essentially framed as a command structure. What's the effect of doing that?
Well, the idea seems to be to explicitly show the ultimate authority, but also the structured governance of the divine realm.
Like an organization chart for heaven?
Sort of, yeah. It visually and narratively conveys this chain of command, from the absolute top power down to the operational units. It gives this tangible sense of order.
That's a very concrete way to picture it, almost tactical.
It is. It definitely makes these abstract concepts feel more graspable, maybe. But it also, makes you think about how portraying the divine in such a structured, almost tactical way impacts how you perceive it.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we've got this divine command at the top. How does it, act? How does the BCU show divine intervention happening in the universe? Make it tangible, like you said.
Right, so that's where these specialized groups come in. The sources mention two specific ones. HEAL Team 7 or HT7.
HEAL Team 7 sounds like a special ops team.
Exactly. And then there's the Apostolic Special Forces or ASF.
Apostolic Special Forces. Okay, so what do they do?
Well, HT7 is described as being for healing and other kinds of direct actions.
Direct actions.
And the ASF is more focused on things like communication, healing, or the spread of the gospel. So different functions.
So these units are basically how God gets things done in this universe.
That seems to be the narrative function, yeah. They visually represent the divine being active and engaged, turning abstract intervention into something more like, missions, tactical operations.
It does make you wonder how they portray something like omnipotence when it's broken down into units and missions.
That's a great point. It certainly provides a specific narrative structure.
Now, you can't really have a cinematic universe, especially one with military themes, without some kind of conflict, some antagonist. What's the role of spiritual warfare here? Who's the main adversary?
Yeah, good question. Sources are clear on that. They name Lucifer, or Satan, specifically framing him as the brigadier vice general of the fallen angels.
Brigadier vice general? Wow, they really lean into the military ranks.
They really do. So he's set up as the primary antagonist.
And what does his inclusion achieve narratively?
It basically underscores this idea of an ongoing spiritual conflict within the BCU. It's the backdrop.
Right.
It allows for stories that explore all those classic themes. Good versus evil, temptation, rebellion, redemption. It's this constant cosmic struggle happening behind everything else.
Okay, so it provides the tension for the whole universe, but it's not just about God, angels, and demons, right? What about people? How does humanity fit into this grand plan, this military structure?
That's crucial, actually. The BCU seems to really emphasize humanity's role. They highlight figures you'd expect: Moses, Noah, Esther, Jonah.
Familiar names.
Right. But also someone like the Apostle Paul. And interestingly, he's presented as actually being an integral part of the Apostolic Special Forces.
Paul, as part of the ASF. So, like, his missionary journeys were deployments.
Kind of, yeah. That's how it's framed. Their stories aren't just isolated biographical events. They're shown as faith journeys, struggles, contributions, but often depicted as missions or assignments within this whole military-style setup.
Wow. That definitely puts a different spin on it. Gives it a sense of coordinated effort.
Exactly. It integrates humanity directly into this larger cosmic drama and divine plan, not just as bystanders.
Okay, so you've got all these interconnected stories, characters, divine units, human missions. For any cinematic universe to hold together, consistency is key. How does the BCU approach that? Especially with source material that's so vast and, well, ancient.
Yeah, that's a huge challenge for any shared universe.
Yeah.
The sources explicitly state a commitment. They say that all stories and elements introduced will not conflict or counteract with each other in the future.
Okay, so a promise of internal consistency.
Right. And that dedication is vital. If you want to build a believable, immersive, fictional world, everything needs to connect. Events and characters need to contribute to the bigger picture without, creating plot holes.
Makes sense. That consistency is what lets you buy into the whole thing as a cohesive universe.
Precisely. Without it, the whole idea of an interconnected narrative kind of falls apart.
So, connecting all these pieces.
Yeah.
What does this mean for the BCU's timeline? How do they actually conceptualize time and the unfolding of events? It doesn't sound like it's just a straight historical retelling.
No, definitely not. The sources clarify that it's conceptualized more as an ongoing cosmic drama rather than a strict linear historical progression. That's a really important distinction.
Ongoing cosmic drama. Okay, so how is that broken down? Are there like stages or eras?
Yeah, they break it down into three broad conceptual eras. First, there's what they call the pre-creation primordial conflict.
Before creation, okay.
Right. This is where they establish the divine command, but also where the rebellion and fall of Lucifer happens, kicking off that whole spiritual conflict we talked about.
So the conflict starts even before humanity is on the scene.
That's the framing, yeah. Then the second era is the cosmic drama, ongoing spiritual conflict, and divine intervention.
Okay, so this is where most of the action happens.
Seems like it. This is where humanity is introduced, where you see the continuous divine intervention through HT7 and ASF operations, the ongoing spiritual warfare, and all those individual human stories playing out as missions.
Gotcha. And the third era?
The third is described as future ongoing narrative development. This seems to emphasize that the story isn't finished. It's about continuing to build out the lore cohesively, always reaffirming those foundational biblical truths.
So always pointing back to the source material, ultimately.
Exactly. Every element, every story is ultimately intended to point back to the foundational truths of the Bible. That seems to be the guiding principle.
Okay, so let's just quickly recap then. We've explored this idea of the biblical cinematic universe, the BCU. It's this framework trying to reimagine biblical stories through a kind of cinematic military-style lens. It's got the divine command, Yahweh, Holy Spirit, Jesus Christ at the top of a clear hierarchy.
Right.
Divine intervention happens through specialized units like HEAL Team 7 and the Apostolic Special Forces.
Yep, HT7 and ASF.
There's this central ongoing spiritual conflict driven by Lucifer, framed as a fallen general.
The brigadier vice general, yeah.
And humanity isn't left out. Figures like Moses, Noah, and even Paul are shown having significant roles, often like missions within this structure.
Yeah, integral parts.
And it's all built on this commitment to internal consistency and an ongoing cosmic drama timeline, not just straight history.
That sums it up pretty well.
Yeah.
And it's always worth remembering that core intention you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
It's meant to be a bridge.
Right.
A way to make these profound ancient narratives maybe more accessible, more engaging for some people today, hopefully sparking that interest to go explore the original scriptures personally.
It's definitely a creative approach, using familiar structures to open doors to maybe unfamiliar or intimidating texts.
Absolutely. The creativity and interpretation is really noticeable, trying to ignite that curiosity about these deep spiritual ideas.
So, something for you, the listener, to think about. How might looking at familiar stories through a completely different framework like this military one change how you perceive them? What new questions might it make you ask about their deeper meaning? Or maybe even about how divine action is portrayed?
That's a good takeaway question.
Yeah, maybe consider how structured, imaginative approaches like this could potentially help you. Or someone, re-engage with foundational texts or big ideas in your own life, whatever those might be. It's certainly food for thought.